I am Dora, 25 years old, and I have always been the responsible daughter. When my sister Kimberly graduated college last spring, our parents threw her a lavish dinner. I still remember my mother's smile as she handed my sister those Tesla keys worth $60,000. Then she turned to me and casually mentioned I would need to start paying $1,500 in rent next month. That night changed everything between us. If you are watching this video, drop a comment letting me know where you are viewing from, and do not forget to like and subscribe to hear more stories about standing up for yourself when family takes advantage. Growing up, I was always the responsible one. From the time I was old enough to understand the concept of expectations, I knew mine were higher than my sister's. Our parents, Catherine and Robert, seemed to have different rulebooks for us. When I was 16, I had to maintain straight A's, participate in extracurriculars that would look good on college applications, and work weekends at the local grocery store to contribute to my future education. Meanwhile, Kimberly got praised for bringing home B's and C's. I did not mind working hard. In fact, I took pride in my accomplishments. By senior year, I was class president, captain of the debate team, and graduated with a 4.0 GPA. The evening of my high school graduation, we celebrated at Applebee's. My parents gave me a card with $200 and told me how proud they were. I appreciated the sentiment, but could not help noticing they had thrown Kimberly a backyard party with all her friends when she simply passed her driver's test. College was more of the same. I attended State University on a partial scholarship, but still needed to cover the rest. I worked 3 part-time jobs: morning shifts at a coffee shop, weekend receptionist at a law firm, and online tutoring in the evenings. Even with this schedule, I maintained a 3.8 GPA in my business program. My parents called occasionally, mostly to ask about my grades or to tell me about Kimberly's latest accomplishments in high school. When I graduated with honors, my parents attended the ceremony, but had to leave early because Kimberly had a dance recital that afternoon. My graduation dinner was at a chain restaurant where my father spent most of the time on his phone checking work emails. My gift was a business casual outfit for job interviews. Practical, but hardly celebratory. The job market was tough when I graduated. Despite my qualifications, the entry-level positions in my field were scarce. After 3 months of sending out applications and getting nowhere, I reluctantly moved back home. My parents agreed, but with clear expectations that this was temporary. I finally landed a job as an assistant marketing coordinator. The pay was not great, $40,000 a year, but it was in my field and offered growth potential. The day after I received my first paycheck, my mother casually mentioned over breakfast that now that I was employed, they expected me to contribute to household expenses. $400 a month seemed reasonable for room and board, so I agreed without complaint. Meanwhile, Kimberly was preparing for college. Unlike me, she opted for the expensive private university across the state. My parents did not blink at the $45,000 per year tuition. They even bought her a new MacBook Pro, a full wardrobe, and completely furnished her dorm room from Pottery Barn. When I mentioned the disparity once, my mother said, "You always had everything handled, Dora. Kimberly needs more support to succeed." I tried not to let it bother me. Perhaps Kimberly did need more support. Maybe I should be proud that I was self-sufficient enough that my parents did not worry about me. But as the years passed and the pattern continued, it became harder to ignore. During Kimberly's 4 years at college, she changed majors 3 times, took a semester off to find herself in Europe, and somehow still graduated on time with a communications degree. Throughout this period, my contributions to household expenses gradually increased to $600 monthly, while I also paid my student loans and tried to build some savings. Every time I considered getting my own place, something held me back. Partly finances, but partly a lingering hope that someday my parents would see and appreciate my efforts the way they celebrated Kimberly's mere existence. By the time Kimberly's graduation approached, I had been promoted twice at work and was now earning a respectable $65,000 annually. I had paid off half my student loans through aggressive budgeting and was finally starting to build some savings. I still lived at home, though now I was paying $800 monthly to my parents. I genuinely loved my sister. Despite the obvious favoritism, Kimberly had never been deliberately cruel about it. She was simply accustomed to being the center of attention and receiving whatever she wanted. Our relationship was cordial, if not deeply close. I bought her an expensive graduation gift, a designer handbag she had been hinting about for months. It cost nearly $2,000, a significant chunk of my savings, but I wanted to show my support and love. The weekend before her graduation dinner, I overheard my parents discussing finances in their bedroom. My father sounded stressed about credit card debt, and my mother assured him that once Kimberly graduates and Dora starts paying her fair share, things will get easier. The comment unsettled me, but I pushed it aside. Surely they would not expect me to subsidize the family significantly. I was, after all, trying to build my own life. Kimberly's graduation dinner was at Le Beau Jardin, the most expensive restaurant in our city. I arrived early, having taken half a day off work to help my parents set up the private room they had reserved. Crystal glasses sparkled under chandeliers, and each place setting featured an elegant gift bag except for mine. I noticed but said nothing. As family and friends arrived, I played the role of supportive sister perfectly. I took photos, directed guests to the gift table, and made sure everyone had drinks. My sister arrived last, making her entrance in a new dress I had not seen before. My parents beamed with pride. "Our daughter, the college graduate," my father announced, raising his glass. Everyone cheered. I smiled and clapped along with the others, genuinely happy for Kimberly, despite the nagging voice in my head reminding me that my own graduation had warranted no such celebration. Dinner was a lavish affair, multiple courses of gourmet food accompanied by expensive wine. I calculated the cost in my head as the evening progressed, estimating that my parents must be spending at least $5,000 on this single meal. I thought about the second job I had taken during college just to afford textbooks, but pushed the thought away. This was Kimberly's night. When dessert arrived, my mother stood up and clinked her glass for attention. The room quieted as she began an emotional speech about how proud she was of Kimberly's achievement. "Your father and I wanted to give you something special to mark this occasion," she said, reaching into her purse. "Something that represents the bright future ahead of you." She pulled out a small box and handed it to Kimberly. My sister opened it with theatrical slowness, then screamed with delight. She held up a key fob with the distinctive Tesla logo. "Are you serious right now?" Kimberly shrieked, jumping from her chair. My father nodded, grinning. "It is parked outside, the blue Model Y you have been eyeing." The room erupted in excited chatter as Kimberly ran to the window. Sure enough, a brand new Tesla with a giant bow sat in the parking lot. $60,000, minimum. My brain automatically calculated. Probably closer to 70 with the additions my sister would have wanted. I felt like I was underwater, sounds muffled around me. I remembered receiving a $100 gas card for my graduation, which my father had reminded me was practical since you will be commuting to job interviews. As guests rushed outside to admire the vehicle, I remained seated, trying to process what was happening. My mother returned to the table and sat beside me. I expected perhaps an acknowledgement of the disparity, maybe even an explanation. Instead, she placed her hand on mine and smiled. "Dora, your father and I have been meaning to talk to you about your living situation," she began. My stomach tightened. "Now that you have been at your job for 3 years with good promotions, we think it is time you contribute more substantially to the household." I blinked, trying to follow her logic. "More than the $800 I already pay? Starting next month, we would like $1,500 for rent," she said casually, as if discussing the weather. "It is still below market rate for the area, and you do have the entire finished basement to yourself." I stared at her, waiting for more explanation. None came. Outside, I could hear Kimberly revving the Tesla's motor to appreciative oohs and ahs. "You just spent $60,000 on a car for Kimberly," I said slowly, "and now you are asking me to nearly double my rent?" My mother's expression hardened slightly. "Those two things are not related, Dora. Your sister just graduated. This is her gift. You have been working for years. It is time you paid your fair share." "Fair share," I repeated. The phrase echoed in my head, along with the conversation I had overheard about finances. Suddenly, the picture became clearer. Before I could respond, she patted my hand and stood up. "We can discuss the details tomorrow. Let us not spoil Kimberly's special day." She walked away to rejoin the celebration outside, leaving me alone at the table. I sat there for several minutes, surrounded by empty plates and half-finished glasses of champagne. The contrast could not have been more stark. A $60,000 car versus a $1,500 rent bill. A celebration versus an expectation. A gift versus a burden. The drive home was tense. Kimberly followed in her new Tesla, honking playfully at every stoplight. My parents chatted excitedly about the features of the car and how impressed everyone had been. Not once did they mention our earlier conversation about rent. Not once did they seem to notice my silence. As we pulled into the driveway, Kimberly rushed inside to call her friends. My parents lingered in the front yard, admiring the Tesla under the streetlights. "It really is a beautiful car," my father said proudly. "Our baby girl deserves the best." I walked past them without comment and went straight to my basement bedroom, closing the door quietly behind me. As I sat on my bed, the reality of the situation washed over me. I was not a daughter to them. Not really. I was a tenant, perhaps even a source of income to fund Kimberly's lifestyle. For the first time, I allowed myself to feel the full weight of the injustice, and with that recognition came a decision I had been avoiding for far too long. I did not sleep that night. As the sounds of celebration continued upstairs, with Kimberly showing off her Tesla keys to friends who had come over after dinner, I sat in my basement bedroom with a notepad, calculator, and laptop, reassessing my entire life. First, I reviewed my finances. My current salary was $65,000 gross, about $48,000 after taxes. My student loan payments were $600 monthly, with another $18,000 remaining. I had managed to save $22,000 over 3 years, being extremely frugal. My car was paid off but aging, likely needing repairs soon. If I started paying $1,500 monthly to my parents, that would be $18,000 per year, more than a third of my take-home pay. Add in student loans, car insurance, health insurance, food, and basic necessities, and I would be left with virtually nothing to save. I would be working full-time just to subsidize my parents' household while they bought luxury vehicles for my sister. The more I thought about it, the more I realized this had been the dynamic my entire life. I was the responsible one, the one who worked hard and asked for little. Kimberly was the one who received. The question was, why had I accepted this for so long? Opening my laptop, I started searching for apartments in my area. Most one-bedrooms were around $1,300 to $1,500 monthly, not much different from what my parents now expected me to pay for a basement room in their house. A few studio apartments were more affordable, around $1,100. One listing caught my eye, a small but renovated studio downtown for $950 per month, utilities included. The location would add 10 minutes to my commute, but was walking distance to several restaurants and a park. I emailed the landlord immediately, asking if the unit was still available and if I could view it the next day. Then I texted my friend Amanda, who had been telling me for years that my family situation was unhealthy. "You were right," I wrote. "I need to get out. Can I possibly crash with you for a few days while I sort out an apartment?" Amanda responded immediately. "Finally! Guest room is yours for as long as you need. Come tonight if you want." I stared at her message, a sudden sense of possibility washing over me. Why not tonight? What was I waiting for? Another conversation where my mother explained why I needed to subsidize their lifestyle while they spoiled my sister? Another reminder that my contributions to the family were expected while Kimberly's mere existence was celebrated? Making a quick decision, I pulled my suitcases from under the bed and began packing methodically. Clothes, personal documents, electronics, and a few sentimental items that were truly mine. I was surprised by how little I actually owned that I cared about taking. As I packed, I could hear the party winding down upstairs. Kimberly's friends were leaving, my parents were cleaning up. No one came to check on me, to see why I had disappeared from the celebration. The realization strengthened my resolve. I made 3 trips carrying bags to my car, parked on the street rather than the driveway where Kimberly's new Tesla now Saturday. No one noticed my movement in the darkness. Back in my room, I looked around at the space I had occupied for the past 3 years. It had never really felt like mine, I realized. Always temporary. Always conditional. On my desk, I left a brief note. I have decided it is time for me to move out. The rent increase makes it more economical for me to have my own place. I have paid this month's $800 already. I will be in touch once I am settled. Dora. No emotional appeals. No accusations. Just facts. I knew any attempt to express my feelings would be dismissed, or turned around on me as being jealous or ungrateful. Taking one last look around, I closed the door quietly behind me. The house was silent now, everyone likely in bed after the excitement of the day. I slipped out the side door, clicked it locked behind me, and walked to my car without looking back. The drive to Amanda's apartment took 20 minutes. With each mile that passed, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. Fear mixed with exhilaration, uncertainty with relief. By the time I parked outside her building, my hands had stopped shaking. Amanda was waiting at the door in pajamas, her expression a mixture of concern and pride. "You actually did it," she said, helping me with my bags. "I actually did it," I confirmed, following her inside. Her guest room was small but cozy, with a real bed instead of the futon I had in my parents' basement. She had already put out fresh towels and a spare key to her apartment. "We can talk about everything tomorrow," she said. "Get some sleep. You are safe here." For the first time in years, perhaps for the first time ever, I felt like someone was putting my needs first. As I lay in bed that night, I expected to feel regret or anxiety. Instead, I felt something entirely different. Freedom. The first week at Amanda's apartment was a blur of apartment viewings, work meetings, and dodging calls from my family. My phone buzzed constantly that first day, with messages ranging from confusion to anger. My mother's texts evolved from, "Where are you?" to, "How could you be so selfish?" within hours. My father called twice, leaving voicemails asking me to be reasonable and discuss this like adults. Kimberly sent a single text. "Way to make my graduation about you." Again. I responded to none of them. Amanda had advised me to take a complete break to clear my head before engaging with them again, and her advice resonated with what I needed. Instead, I focused on securing the studio apartment I had found online. The landlord, an elderly woman named Beatrice, showed me the unit the day after I left home. It was indeed small, just 400 square feet, but cleverly designed to maximize the space. A Murphy bed folded into the wall during the day, creating a living area. The kitchenette was minimal but functional, and the bathroom had been recently updated. The best feature was a large window that overlooked a small community garden. "It is not much," Beatrice acknowledged, "but it is quiet, clean, and all yours. All mine." The phrase struck me profoundly. I signed the lease that day, putting down my first month's rent and security deposit. I could move in immediately. Furnishing the apartment was an exercise in budgeting and creativity. I had my personal belongings but owned no furniture. Amanda helped me scour thrift stores and online marketplaces for affordable pieces. A second-hand table and chair set for $80. A comfortable reading chair for $60. Kitchen essentials from the dollar store. Slowly, the empty space transformed into something that felt like mine. Meanwhile, the calls from my family continued. After 3 days, my mother's messages turned threatening. "If you do not call us back immediately, we will report you as missing to the police." I finally sent a brief text. "I am safe and well. I need space. Please respect that. They did not respect it. My father showed up at my workplace the following day, causing a scene in the reception area that required my boss to intervene. Mortified, I had to explain some version of the situation to my supervisor. Family disagreement, I said vaguely. I recently moved out and they are not taking it well. My boss, Natalie, was surprisingly understanding. Take an extra long lunch if you need to sort things out, she offered, and let security know if they show up again. That weekend, I changed my phone number, giving the new one only to Amanda, my boss, and a few close friends with strict instructions not to share it with my family. It felt extreme, but also necessary for my mental peace. With each day that passed in my new apartment, I felt more centered. The simple routine of waking up in my own space, making coffee in my own kitchen, and coming home to a place that was entirely mine brought a sense of calm I had never experienced. There were challenges, of course. The budget was tight. After rent, loans, and basic living expenses, I had little left over for extras. But the freedom was worth every sacrifice. 2 weeks after moving out, I met my neighbor across the hall, Heather, a graphic designer who worked remotely. She invited me over for coffee, and we discovered a shared love of old movies and hiking. It was refreshing to form a friendship based on common interests rather than obligation or history. I moved here after leaving a bad relationship, Heather told me over our second coffee date. Best decision I ever made. Sometimes you have to put yourself first to figure out who you really are. Her words resonated deeply. Who was I, outside of being the responsible daughter, the one who always did what was expected? I was only beginning to discover the answer. At work, freed from the constant stress of my family situation, my performance improved. Natalie noticed and assigned me to lead a new project with a major client. The opportunity came with the promise of another promotion if it went well, potentially increasing my salary to $75,000. For the first time, I could envision a future where I was not just financially stable but thriving. 1 month after leaving, at Amanda's suggestion, I started seeing a therapist, Dr. Eleanor specialized in family dynamics and helped me understand that what I had experienced was a common pattern in families with unequal treatment of children. You were assigned the role of the responsible one, the caretaker, from an early age, she explained during our second session. Your sister was assigned the role of the one who needed care. Neither of you chose these roles, but you both played them out. Why would my parents do that? I asked, genuinely confused. Why invest everything in Kimberly and expect me to fend for myself? Parents often unconsciously recreate patterns from their own upbringings, Dr. Eleanor explained. Or they may see aspects of themselves in one child that they want to nurture or correct. The important thing now is recognizing that you did not deserve unequal treatment, and you have the right to set boundaries. Boundaries became my focus in therapy. I learned that I could love my family while still protecting myself from their harmful patterns. I could wish them well without sacrificing my well-being for their benefit. These were revolutionary concepts for someone who had been raised to believe that family obligation trumped all personal needs. By the end of my second month on my own, I had settled into a routine that felt sustainable. My apartment, though small, had become a sanctuary decorated with plants and artwork that reflected my personal taste. I had joined a local hiking group through Heather and made several new acquaintances who knew nothing about my family drama. I was excelling at work, saving money again, and sleeping better than I had in years. Then came the weekend of 29 missed calls, and everything changed again. The initial weeks after my departure seemed to confirm that I had made the right decision. My parents' messages showed more concern for the inconvenience I had caused them than for my well-being. My mother's texts oscillated between guilt trips, "After all we have done for you," and demands, "You need to return home immediately and discuss this like an adult." My father, who had always been more passive in family conflicts, mostly echoed my mother's sentiments, while occasionally attempting a more conciliatory tone. Through Amanda, who still had contact with my family, I learned that my parents had told relatives and family friends that I was going through a phase or having a quarter-life crisis. They framed my departure as an act of rebellion rather than a response to years of unequal treatment. This narrative served two purposes. It absolved them of any responsibility, and it positioned me as unstable and unreasonable. About 3 weeks after I left, the tactics changed. My mother began sending longer, more emotional messages through Amanda. "Tell Dora we miss her and just want to talk. The house feels empty without her." These appeals were harder to dismiss than the angry demands, but Dr. Eleanor helped me recognize them as another form of manipulation. "Notice that there is still no acknowledgement of your feelings or the issues that caused you to leave," she pointed out during one of our sessions. True reconciliation starts with recognition. Around the 1-month mark, my family began involving extended relatives in their efforts to reach me. My Aunt Margaret, my mother's sister who I had always been close to, called Amanda repeatedly until she reluctantly passed along the message that Margaret wanted to see me. I agreed to meet her for lunch at a cafe far from my new apartment. The meeting started warmly, but quickly revealed its true purpose. "Your mother is beside herself," Margaret said after our initial greetings. "She cannot understand why you would just abandon your family like this. Did she tell you about the $1,500 rent demand right after giving Kimberly a Tesla?" I asked. Margaret looked uncomfortable. "Well, you do have a good job now, and parents have the right to ask adult children to contribute to the household. $800 was my contribution. $1,500 was subsidizing Kimberly's car," I replied. The conversation deteriorated from there, with Margaret ultimately admitting she had promised my mother she would find out where I was living. I left without finishing my meal or providing any information about my new home. The following week, Margaret showed up at my workplace, causing another uncomfortable scene. This time, Natalie was less understanding. "You need to resolve whatever this is," she said firmly. "I cannot have family drama disrupting the office." That evening, I called my father's cell phone, the first direct contact I had initiated since leaving. He answered immediately, his voice a mixture of relief and caution. "Dora, are you okay?" "I am fine," I said. "But I need you and Mom to stop sending people to my workplace. It is affecting my job. We would not have to resort to such measures if you would just talk to us," he responded, a defensive edge creeping into his tone. "Your mother is worried sick. I am not having this conversation right now. Just stop contacting my workplace. I will reach out when I am ready." I hung up before he could respond. It was a small assertion of boundary, but it felt significant. The next revelation came through Heather, who had become a close friend. She had run into Kimberly at a local coffee shop and, not knowing our connection, had struck up a conversation when Kimberly admired her laptop stickers. Somehow, the topic of jobs had come up. She mentioned she recently lost her marketing position and moved back home, Heather reported. Said the company had unexpected layoffs. She seemed pretty down about it. This information shifted something in my understanding of the situation. If Kimberly was unemployed and living at home, my parents' household income had decreased significantly while their expenses had increased. The timing aligned perfectly with their sudden demand for more rent from me. Through careful questioning of Amanda, who still followed family social media, I learned more. The Tesla had been in an accident just 2 weeks after graduation. Kimberly had been unharmed, but the car had sustained significant damage. Worse, it turned out my sister had failed to get proper insurance coverage, leaving my parents to cover the $5,000 deductible for repairs. Additionally, Amanda discovered through mutual friends that my father's small accounting firm was struggling. He had lost 2 major clients in recent months and had to let go of an employee. The financial picture was becoming clearer, and it was not pretty. 6 weeks after my departure, the situation escalated again when my mother somehow obtained my work email address and began sending daily messages. Most were emotional appeals, but some contained concerning information. Your father's blood pressure is through the roof because of the stress you have caused, one read. Is this how you repay us for everything we have done for you? I did not respond, but I did forward her emails to my personal account, creating a record of the communication on Dr. Eleanor's advice. Document everything, she had suggested. It helps maintain clarity when emotions get overwhelming. The real shock came 2 months after I had left. Amanda called me, sounding upset. I just ran into your Aunt Margaret at the grocery store, she said. Dora, they are telling people you had some kind of mental breakdown. They are saying you became paranoid and delusional, and that is why you left. Margaret asked if I had noticed any concerning behaviors from you. The revelation left me speechless. It was one thing for my parents to be angry or hurt by my departure, but to actively spread lies about my mental health was a new low. It was a calculated attempt to discredit me, to ensure that if I ever spoke about the real reasons for leaving, no one would believe me. That weekend, I took a significant step in reclaiming my narrative. I wrote a calm, factual email to several family members and close family friends, explaining my decision to move out and addressing the rumors about my mental health. I am well and thriving in my new independent life, I wrote. My decision to leave was based on financial considerations and a desire for independence at 25, both perfectly normal adult choices. I am saddened to hear that alternative explanations for my departure are being circulated. The responses were illuminating. Several relatives expressed surprise at the version of events they had been told. A few offered support and understanding. Others maintained loyalty to my parents' narrative. The family had begun to polarize around the situation, which was painful but also clarifying. Nearly 3 months after I had left, things came to a head. Over a single weekend, my phone registered 29 missed calls from various family members, including numbers I did not recognize. Something had clearly happened. I learned through Amanda that my parents had called an emergency family meeting to discuss the Dora situation. Whatever was said at that meeting had mobilized the entire extended family to try to reach me. I did not return any of the calls, but I knew a confrontation was now inevitable. The question was no longer if, but when and on whose terms. The answer came the very next day, when my mother showed up unannounced at my apartment building. I never did figure out how my mother found my new address. Perhaps she had hired someone, or maybe a well-meaning relative had discovered it and passed it along. Regardless, on a Monday evening exactly 3 months after I had left home, I returned from work to find her sitting in the lobby of my apartment building. My first instinct was to turn around and leave, to avoid the confrontation altogether. But something stopped me, a voice that sounded remarkably like Dr. Eleanor's. Avoidance prolongs the problem. Sometimes you have to walk through the fire to reach the other side. I approached slowly, my heart pounding. My mother looked smaller somehow, her usually perfect appearance slightly disheveled. When she saw me, she stood quickly, smoothing her skirt with nervous hands. Dora, she said, her voice catching. Finally. How did you find me? I asked, keeping my distance. Does it matter? I am your mother. Did you really think I would just let you disappear from our lives? There was so much to unpack in that statement, so many assumptions about ownership and rights. But the lobby of my building was not the place for that conversation. We can talk in my apartment, I said, leading her to the elevator. Briefly. The ride to the 4th floor was silent and tense. As we walked down the hallway, I saw her taking in the worn carpet, the scuffed walls, the distinct lack of luxury. Her expression was a mixture of disdain and concern that made my stomach clench. Opening my door, I gestured her inside. My studio was clean and organized, but undeniably small. Every square inch had been carefully considered and utilized. It was nothing like the spacious home where I had grown up, but it was mine, paid for with my own money, decorated to my own taste. My mother stood in the center of the room, looking around with an expression I could not quite read. Pity? Judgment? Shock? This is where you have been living? She finally said. This is my home, I replied, emphasizing the word. "Would you like some water? It is all I have to offer." She shook her head and remained standing, though there was a chair right beside her. I took the seat myself, unwilling to give her the height advantage in this conversation. "You need to come home, Dora," she began without preamble. "This has gone on long enough. Whatever point you were trying to make has been made." "I was not trying to make a point," I said calmly. "I was making a decision about my life. I am 25 years old, Mom. I do not need to live with my parents." "But to leave like that? Without even talking to us? And over what? A simple request for rent that any adult should be willing to pay? $1,500 is not a simple request when it comes the same day you give Kimberly a $60,000 car," I pointed out. The contrast made it very clear where I stood in the family priorities. Her face flushed. "That is completely different. That was a graduation gift. I graduated too. With honors. I got a gas card. We could not afford more then. And you have always been so independent, so capable. So I am punished for being responsible, while Kimberly is rewarded for doing the minimum?" My mother's expression hardened. "This is why we cannot have a reasonable conversation with you. You have always been jealous of your sister." It was the same old script, the same deflection and dismissal of my feelings. But this time, I did not back down. "This is not about jealousy," I said firmly. "This is about fairness, about recognition, about feeling valued in my own family. Why is Kimberly living at home rent-free while you demanded $1,500 from me?" My mother looked away, and in that moment, I saw something crack in her facade. She sat down heavily in the chair opposite me. "We need the money," she admitted quietly. "Your father's business is struggling. We have credit card debt from Kimberly's college expenses. And now she is back home after losing her job, with car payments we are helping cover, because she cannot afford them." There it was, finally, the truth. "So I was supposed to subsidize your financial mistakes and Kimberly's lifestyle," I said, not as an accusation, but as a statement of fact. "You have a good job. You are stable. We just needed some help until things turned around," she replied. "Family helps family. But it is not help when it is demanded without explanation, without recognition, without appreciation," I pointed out. "It is exploitation." She flinched at the word. "That is a terrible thing to say to your mother." "It is a terrible thing to realize about your parents," I countered. "Did you ever consider asking me for help directly, explaining the situation and requesting assistance temporarily? Instead, you disguised it as rent and made me feel like a burden in my own family home while celebrating Kimberly." The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken truths. My mother stared at her hands, twisting her wedding ring around her finger. "How bad are the finances?" I finally asked. She looked up, surprised by the question. "Bad," she admitted. "The Tesla repairs cost $5,000 that we did not have because Kimberly did not get the right insurance. Your father lost his 2 biggest clients last year. We have been using credit cards to maintain appearances. The truth island." She hesitated, then continued. "We were counting on your rent increase to help make the minimum payments." The revelation should have made me angry, but instead I felt a strange sense of calm. The puzzle pieces were finally coming together. My parents' behavior had not been about loving Kimberly more, at least not entirely. It had been about financial desperation and poor planning colliding with pride and entitlement. "I cannot fix this for you," I said gently but firmly. "I cannot move back home and pay $1,500 in rent to solve problems I did not create." "Then, what was the point of all the sacrifices we made for you?" she asked, anger flaring again. "The education? The opportunities? Children are supposed to take care of their parents eventually." "I would have helped if you had asked honestly," I told her. "But not like this. Not by being manipulated and made to feel less valuable than Kimberly." My mother stood abruptly. "I can see this was a mistake. You clearly do not care what happens to your family." As she moved toward the door, I remained seated. "I do care," I said quietly. "But I also care what happens to me." For the first time in my life, I am putting myself first, and I will not apologize for that." She paused with her hand on the doorknob, not looking back. "Your father's birthday is next Sunday. He would want you there." It was not quite an olive branch, but it was something. An acknowledgement, perhaps, that the door was not completely closed between us. "I will think about it," I replied. After she left, I sat alone in my tiny apartment, feeling strangely empowered. The confrontation I had feared for months had finally happened, and I had remained true to myself. I had not capitulated, had not agreed to rescue them from their financial mess, but I had also not severed the relationship completely. It was a delicate balance, one I was just learning to maintain. That night, I called Dr. Eleanor and recounted the conversation. "You set a boundary and held it even under pressure," she noted with approval. "That is significant progress. But I still feel guilty," I admitted. "They are in financial trouble, and I do have savings." "Guilt is not the same as responsibility," she reminded me. "You can choose to help them on your terms, if you want to. But you are not obligated to sacrifice your well-being for poor decisions you did not make." It was a distinction I was still learning, the difference between supporting family and enabling dysfunction. But for the first time, I felt capable of finding that line and holding it. The week following my mother's visit was one of deep reflection. I had finally stood my ground, maintained my boundaries, and spoken my truth, but the aftermath left me with complex emotions to process. During a particularly insightful therapy session, Dr. Eleanor helped me understand that resolution would not look like a perfect Hollywood ending. "Healthy relationships require ongoing negotiation," she explained, "especially when rebuilding after dysfunction. The question now is, what kind of relationship do you want with your family moving forward?" It was a profound question that I needed time to consider. I did not want to cut them off completely, but I also could not return to the old patterns that had diminished me. There had to be a middle path. After much thought, I decided to reach out to Kimberly directly. Of all my family members, she was perhaps the least culpable in the situation. She had been raised to expect preferential treatment, had never been taught financial responsibility, and was now facing consequences she was ill-equipped to handle. We agreed to meet at a coffee shop halfway between our homes. When she arrived, I was struck by how different she looked from the jubilant graduate of 3 months ago. Her designer clothes had been replaced with simple jeans and a sweater. The confident swagger was gone, replaced by a hunched posture that spoke of recent defeats. "You look good," she said after an awkward greeting. "Independence suits you." "Thank you," I replied, genuinely touched by the unexpected compliment. "How are things with you?" She shrugged, stirring her coffee aimlessly. "Pretty terrible, actually. I lost my job after 2 months because the company downsized. The Tesla got damaged, and the insurance barely covered it because I got the minimum policy. Mom and Dad are fighting all the time about money, and everyone blames me for you leaving." I had not expected such honesty. "I did not leave because of you," I assured her. "I left because I needed to establish my own life, and because the disparity in how we were treated became too obvious to ignore." Kimberly was quiet for a moment. "I always knew they favored me," she finally admitted. "I just did not think about what that meant for you. It was easier not to question it." "It was not your fault," I said. "You did not create the dynamic." "No, but I benefited from it." She looked up, meeting my eyes directly. "I am sorry, Dora. I should have seen what was happening and said something." Her apology, unexpected and sincere, cracked something open in me. Tears welled up that I had not allowed myself to shed in months of therapy and reflection. "Thank you for saying that," I managed. We spent the next 2 hours talking more honestly than we ever had before. Kimberly revealed that our parents had always presented me as the perfect one, the standard she could never live up to academically or professionally. While they had given her material advantages, they had burdened her with low expectations and constant comparison. They would say things like, "Why cannot you be organized like Dora?" Or, "Dora never needed help with her homework," she explained. It made me feel like I was the disappointment, even with all the gifts and attention. I shared my perspective as well, how the financial responsibilities and emotional neglect had shaped my view of my worth in the family. By the end of our conversation, we had both gained valuable insights into how our parents' dysfunctional approach had harmed us in different but equally significant ways. "What are you going to do now?" I asked as our meeting drew to a close. "I have a job interview next week," she said. "Nothing glamorous, just administrative work, but it is something, and I am looking for roommates so I can move out too. I cannot keep living in that house with all the tension." I felt a surge of pride in her for taking these steps. "That sounds like a good plan. If you need help preparing for the interview, I would be happy to help." "Really?" She looked surprised. "After everything?" "We are still sisters," I said simply. As we parted, she hugged me tightly. "I missed you," she whispered. "The real you, not the version Mom and Dad talk about." The next step was more difficult. After consulting with Dr. Eleanor, I decided to attend my father's birthday dinner, but with clear boundaries in place. I drove myself so I could leave when I needed to. I brought a modest but thoughtful gift, a book by his favorite author, and most importantly, I prepared myself mentally for potential manipulation or guilt trips. The dinner was tense but ultimately productive. My mother was cold at first but thawed slightly as the evening progressed. My father, perhaps humbled by the financial struggles, or simply tired of the conflict, made an effort to engage me about my work and new apartment, without judgment. When the topic of money inevitably arose, I was ready. "I cannot pay rent for a place I do not live," I said calmly, when my mother hinted at their ongoing financial needs. "But I would be willing to help you create a budget and financial plan if you would like." My offer, which placed the responsibility back in their hands while still extending support, caught them off guard. After a moment of silence, my father nodded. "We could use the help," he admitted. "I have never been good with personal finance, even though I do it professionally for others." That conversation marked the beginning of a new phase in our relationship. Over the next few weeks, I helped my parents create a realistic budget, identify unnecessary expenses, and develop a plan to pay down their credit card debt. I did not give them money directly, but I did offer my knowledge and support. My mother resisted at first, uncomfortable with the role reversal of her daughter providing financial guidance. But as their situation gradually improved through better management, her attitude softened. "You are good at this," she acknowledged after one particularly productive session. "You always were sensible about money." It was not quite an apology for the years of unequal treatment, but it was recognition of my value, which felt like a step forward. 6 months after leaving home, my life had transformed in ways I could never have imagined. My studio apartment, once a bare emergency refuge, had become a cozy haven, decorated with plants, books, and artwork that reflected my personality. I had received the promotion at work, bringing my salary to $75,000 and opening new career possibilities. My friendship circle had expanded beyond Amanda to include Heather and several others who knew me as I was now, not as the person my family had defined me to be. Most significantly, I had developed a sense of self-worth, independent of external validation. Through therapy and experience, I had learned that my value did not depend on how much I gave, how responsible I was, or how well I met others' expectations. I was worthy of love and respect simply because I existed, a concept that would have seemed foreign to me just months earlier. My relationship with my family continued to evolve. There were still difficult moments, misunderstandings, and occasional attempts to pull me back into old patterns. But with each interaction, I became more confident in maintaining healthy boundaries while still offering genuine connection. Kimberly secured her administrative job and found roommates, moving out of our parents' home to begin her own journey of independence. Our relationship grew stronger as we supported each other through these transitions, no longer competitors for parental approval, but allies in establishing our adult identities. My parents made slow but steady progress in addressing their financial issues and, perhaps more importantly, in recognizing the harm their unequal treatment had caused. My father, especially, made efforts to acknowledge his part in the dynamic. "I always thought I was doing right by both of you," he told me during a rare one-on-one lunch, "pushing you because you were capable, indulging Kimberly because she seemed to need it. I never considered how that might feel from your perspective. It was not a complete understanding, but it was genuine, and I accepted it as such." 1 year after the graduation dinner that changed everything, I hosted a small gathering in my apartment, which I had recently upgraded to a one-bedroom in the same building. My parents and Kimberly attended, along with Amanda, Heather, and a few other friends. The conversation was sometimes awkward, but mostly warm. As I looked around at this diverse group of people who had played different roles in my journey, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. I had learned that family is not just about blood relations or shared history. It is about mutual respect, genuine support, and the freedom to be your authentic self. Sometimes that means creating distance, setting boundaries, or walking away completely. Other times it means rebuilding on healthier foundations. The journey is rarely linear or complete. There are still days when old insecurities surface, when I question my decisions, or feel the pull of familial expectations. But those moments no longer define me or determine my choices. I have discovered that standing up for yourself is not a single act of courage, but a daily practice of self-respect. If there is one lesson I would share from my experience, it is this: your worth is not measured by what you give or what you receive. It is intrinsic, unchangeable, and entirely yours. No one can diminish it without your permission. And the moment you truly believe, that is the moment you begin to live on your own terms. Have you ever had to set boundaries with family members who treated you unfairly? How did you handle it? Share your experiences in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that it is okay to prioritize their own well-being. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember that it is never too late to create the life you deserve.